stop.
Okay, read the story.
Just wait. I'm just finding. This one. The friendly frog. Once upon a time, there was a king who had been at war for a long time with his neighbors. After many battles had been fought, his capital was besieged by the enemy. Fearing for the safety of the queen, the king implored her to take refuge in a stronghold to which he himself had never been but once. The queen besought him with tears to let her remain at his side and share his fate, and lamented loudly when the king placed her in the carriage which was to take her away under escort. The king promised to slip away whenever possible and pay her a visit, seeking thus to comfort her, although he knew that there was a small chance of the hope being fulfilled, for the castle was a long way off in the midst of the fence of a dense forest, and only those with a thorough knowledge of the roads could possibly reach it. The queen was broken-hearted at having to leave her husband exposed to the perils of war, and though she made her journey by easy stages, lest the fatigue of so much travelling should make her ill, she was downcast and miserable when at length she reached the castle. She made excursions into the country round about, when sufficiently recovered, but found nothing amused or distract her. On all sides wide barren spaces met her eye, melancholy rather than pleasant to look upon. "How different from my old home!" she exclaimed, as she gloomily surveyed the scene. "If I stay here long I shall die. To whom I can talk in this solitude? To whom can I unburden my grief? What have I done that the king should exile me? He must wish me, I suppose, to feel the bitterness of separation to the utmost, since he banishes me to this hateful castle." She grieved long and deeply, and though the king wrote every day to her with good news of the way that siege was going, she became more and more unhappy. At last, she determined that she would go back to him, but knowing that her attendants had been forbidden to let her return, except under special orders from the king, she kept her intention to herself on the pretext of wishing sometimes to join the hunt. She ordered a small chariot capable of accommodating one person only to build for her. This she drove herself and used to keep up with the hounds so closely that she would leave the rest of the hunt behind, the chariot being in her sole control. This gave her the opportunity to escape whenever she liked, and the only obstacle was her lack of familiarity with the roads through the forest. She trusted, however, to the favor of Providence to bring her safely through it. She now gave orders for a great hunt to be held, and intimated her wish that everyone should attend. She herself was to be present in her chariot, and she proposed that every follower of the chase should choose a different line, and so closed every avenue of escape to the quarry. The arrangements were carried out according to the queen's plan. Confident that she would soon see her husband again, she donned her most becoming attire. Her hat was trimmed with feathers of different colors, the front of her dress with a number of precious stones. Thus adorned, she looked in her beauty, which was of no ordinary stamp, like a second Diana. When the excitement of the chase was at its height, she gave rein to her horses, urging them on with voice and whip, until their pace quickened to a gallop. But then, getting their bits between their teeth, the team sped onward so fast that presently the chariot seemed to be borne upon the wind, and to be travelling faster than the eye could follow. Too late! The poor queen repented of her rashness. "What possessed me?" she cried. "To think that I could manage such wild and fairy steeds! Alack, what will become of me? What would the king do if he knew of my great peril? He only sent me away because he loves me dearly, and wished me to be in greater safety, and this is the way I repay his tender care." Her piteous cries rang out upon the air, but though she called on heaven and invoked the fairies to her aid, it seemed that all the ancient powers had forsaken her. Over went the chariot. She lacked the strength to jump clear quickly enough, and her foot was caught between the wheel and the axle tree. It was only by a miracle that she was not killed, and she lay stretched on the ground at the foot of a tree. with her heart scarcely beating and her face covered with blood, unable to speak. For a long time she lay thus. At last she opened her eyes and saw, standing beside her, a woman of gigantic stature. The latter wore naught but a lion's skin. Her arms and legs were bare, and her hair was tied up with a dried snake's skin, the head of which dangled over her shoulder. In her hand she carried for walking stick a stone club, and a quiver full of arrows hung at her side. Their extraordinary apparition convinced the queen that she was dead, and indeed it seemed impossible that she could have survived so terrible a disaster. No wonder death needs resolution, she murmured, since sights so terrible await one in the other world. The giantess overheard these words and laughed to find the queen thought herself dead. "Courage," she said, "you are still in the land of the living, though your lot is not improved. I am the Lion Witch. My dwelling is near by. You must come and live with me. If you will have the kindness, good Lion Witch, to take me back to my castle, the king, who loves me dearly, will not refuse you any ransom you demand, though it were the half of his kingdom." "I will not do that," replied the giantess, "for I have wealth enough already. Moreover, I am tired of living alone, and as you have your wits about you it is possible you may be able to amuse me." With these words she assumed the shape of a lioness, and taking the queen on her back, bore her off into the depths of cavern. There she anointed the queen's wounds with an essence which quickly healed them. But imagine the wonder and despair of the queen to find herself in this dismal lair. The approach to it was by 10,000 steps, which led downward to the center of the earth, and the only light was that which came from a number of lofty lamps, reflected in a lake of quicksilver. This lake, this lake teemed with monsters, each of which was hideous enough to have terrified one far less timid than the queen. Ravens, screech owls, and many other birds of evil omen filled the air with harsh cries. Far off could be espied a mountain, from the slopes of which there flowed the tears of all hapless lovers. Its sluggish stream was fed by every ill-starred love. The trees had neither leaves nor fruit, and the ground was cumbered with briars, nettles, and rank weeds. The food, too, was such as might be expected in such a horrid clime. A few dried roots, horse chestnuts, and torn apples. This was all the fare with which the Lion Witch appeased the hunger of those who fell into her clutches. When the queen was well enough to be set to work, the witch told her she might build herself a hut, since she was fated to remain in her company for the rest of her life. On hearing this, the queen burst into tears. "Alas," she cried, "what I have done to you should keep me here. If my death, which I feel to be nigh, will cause you any pleasure, then I implore you to kill me. I dare not hope for any other kindness from you, but do not condemn me to the sadness of a lifelong separation from my husband." But the Lion Witch merely laughed at her, bidding her dry her tears if she would be wise and do her part to please her. Otherwise, she declared, her lot would be the most miserable in the world. "And what must I do to soften your heart?" replied the queen. "I have a liking for fly pasties," said the Lion Witch, "and you must contrive to catch the flies enough to make me a large and tasty one." "But there are no flies here," rejoined the queen, "and even if there were, there is not enough light to catch them by. Moreover, supposing I caught some, I have never in my life made pastry. You are therefore giving me orders which I cannot possibly carry out." "No matter," said the pitiless Lion Witch. "What I want I will have." The queen made no reply, but reflected that, no matter how cruel the witch might be, she had only one life to lose, and in her present plight what terror could death hold for her? She did not attempt to look for flies, therefore, but sat down beneath a yew tree, and gave way to tears and lamentations. "Alas, dear husband," she cried, "how grieved you will be when you go to fetch me from the castle, and find me gone. You will suppose me to be dead or faithless. How I hope that you will mourn the loss of my life, not the loss of my love. Perhaps the remains of my chariot will be found in the wood, with all the ornaments I had put on to please you. At sight of this, you will not doubt any more that I am dead. But then, how do I know that you will not bestow on some one else the heartfelt love which once belonged to me? At all events, I shall be spared the sorrow of that knowledge, since I am never to return to the world." These thoughts would have filled her mind for a long time, but she was interrupted by the dismal croaking of a raven overhead. Lifting her eyes, she saw in the dim light a large raven on the point of swallowing a frog which which it which it held in its beak. "Though I have no hope of help for myself," she said, "I will not let this unfortunate frog die. If I can save it, though our lots are so different, its suffering are quite as great as mine. She picked up the first stick which came to hand, and made the raven let go its prey. The frog fell to the ground and lay for a time half stunned, but as soon as it could think its froggish away, it began to speak. "Beautiful queen," it said, "you are the first friendly soul that I have seen since my curiosity brought me here. By what magic are you endowed with speech, little frog?" replied the queen. "And what people are they whom you see here? I have seen none at all as yet. All the monsters with which the lake is teeming," replied the little frog. "For once upon a time in the world, some sat on thrones, some held high positions at court. There are even some royal ladies here who were the cause of strife and bloodshed. It is this latter whom you see in the shape of leeches, and they are condemned to remain here for a certain time. But of those who come here, none ever returns to the world better or wiser." "I can quite understand," said the queen, "that weak people are not improved by merely being thrown together. But how is it that you are here, my friendly little frog?" "I came here out of curiosity," she replied. "I am part of fairy, and though in certain directions my powers are limited, in others they are far reaching. The lion witch would kill me if she knew that I was in her domain." "Whatever your fairy powers," said the queen, "I cannot understand how you could have fallen into Raven's clutches and come so near to being devoured." "That is easily explained," said the frog. "I have naught to fear when my little cup of roses is on my head, for that is the source of my power. Unluckily I had left it in the marsh when that ugly raven pounced upon me, and but for you, madam, I should not now be here, since you have saved my life. You have only to command me, and I will do everything in my power to lessen the misfortunes of your lot." "Alas, dear frog," said the queen, "the wicked fairy who holds me captive desires that I should make her a fly pasty, but there are no flies here, and if there were, I could not see to catch them in the dim light. I am like, therefore, to get a being which will kill me." "Leave that to me," said the frog. "I will quickly get you some." Thereupon the frog smeared sugar all over herself, and the same was done by more than six, then made for a place where the fairy had a large store of flies, which she used to torment some, the flies smelled the sugar. Then they flew the frogs away, then went to the latter at a gallop to bring their friendly aid to the queen. Never was there such a catching out of flies before, nor a better pasty than the no one the queen made for the fairy. The surprise of the witch was great when the queen handed into her into her, for she was baffled to think how the queen suffered against the poisonous air branches and began to build herself a hut. Wait,
It has a large
lay down. Okay. The queen suffered so much from want of protection against the poisonous air that she cut herself a hat. The frog kindly offered her services. She summoned round her all those who had helped in the fly hunt, and they assisted the queen to build as pretty a little place to live in as she could find anywhere in the world. But no sooner had she lain down to rest than the monsters of the lake, envious of her repose, gathered round the hut. They set up the most hideous noise that had ever been heard, and drove her so nearly mad that she got up and fled in fear and trembling from the house. This was just what the monsters were after in the dragon, who had once upon a time ruled tyrannously over one of the greatest countries of the world, immediately took possession of it. The poor queen tried to protest against this ill treatment, but no one would, and the Lion Witch said that if she could, the monsters laughed and jeered at her, and the Lion Witch said that if she came in dined lamentations into her ears again, she would give her a sound thrashing. The queen was therefore obliged to hold her tongue. She sought out the frog, who was the most sympathetic creature in the world, and they wept together. For the moment she put on her crop of roses, the frog became able to laugh or weep like anybody else. "I am so fond of you," said the frog to the queen, "that I will build your house again. To every monster the lake should be filled with envy." Forthwith she cut some wood and a little country mansion for the queen, sprung up so quickly that she was able to sleep in it that very night. Joy that could make for the queen's comfort was forgotten by the frog, and there was even a bed of wild thyme. When the wicked fairy learned that the queen was not sleeping on the ground, she sent for her and asked, "What power is it, human or divine, that protects you? This land drinks only a rain of burning sulphur and has never produced so much as sage leaf. Yet they tell me fragrant herbs spring up beneath your feet." "I cannot explain it, madame," said the queen, "unless it is due, unless the queen began distressed her, and she despaired as she thought of the impossibility of finding flowers. But when she returned to the little house, the friendly frog met her. "How unhappy you look," she said. "Alas, dear friend, so perceive the most beautiful flowers. Where, where am I to find them? You see what sort of fortress if I do not do procedure." "Dear queen," said the frog tenderly, "we must do our best to extract extricate your from that of my acquaintance. A kindly soul She moves more about quickly than the queen. Kurt said, "Law, it being quite impossible to embrace the frog," and the latter went off at once to speak to the bat, back with some exquisite offhand. He never ceased to plot some means of escape, and told the frogs of her longings. "Madame," said the latter little cup, "allow me first to take counsel with my little cup, and she will make plans according to what it advises." Having placed her cup upon some straw, Fate, the all-powerful, decrees that you must not leave this place. You have a little princess more beautiful than Venus herself. The queen bowed. The queen bowed her head and shed tears, but she determined to have faith in the she had found. "Whatever happens," she said, "do not leave me here alone, and be friend with me when my little one is born." The frog promised to remain with her, and did her best to comfort her.